Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. There are nights when the world feels too heavy, when the silence around you carries the weight of unanswered questions, and the future appears like a foggy road with no clear direction. In those moments, you might wonder if there is a compass, a voice, or even a story that can anchor you, reminding you that chaos and uncertainty can be shaped into order, meaning, and even peace. That is where this journey begins, with the voice of a man who spoke not in fiery passion, but in steady wisdom, reminding us that security, wealth, and clarity are not accidents. They are choices made patiently, consistently, and with courage. That man was Benjamin Graham. Benjamin Graham is often remembered as the quiet father of value investing, the teacher whose words built the foundation upon which legends like Warren Buffett stood. But he was not just a financial thinker. He was a man who lived through storms of history, the Great Depression, crashes, recoveries, wars, and endless cycles of hope and despair. His writing does not shout. It whispers steadily like a trusted guide holding a lantern through dark woods. The Intelligent Investor is not a manual for the quick or the greedy. It is a meditation on discipline, humility, and the human heart when confronted with money, risk, and time. And tonight, as you listen, it becomes something more than a book summary. It becomes a mirror, a reminder that your relationship with money is ultimately a reflection of your relationship with yourself. The first truth that Graham brings forth is the idea of the investor as either defensive or enterprising. These are not just categories of finance, they are categories of temperament. The defensive investor seeks safety, not excitement. They build walls with steady choices, protecting what they have with patience. The enterprising investor, on the other hand, is willing to lean into the unknown, to dig for hidden value, to accept the work and the risk for the promise of a greater return. And what Graham makes clear, in a voice both stern and compassionate, is that neither path is wrong. The real mistake is pretending to be what you are not. The defensive soul who chases speculation will be destroyed by their own impatience. The enterprising heart that refuses to do the work will be crushed by their own negligence. The mantra repeats, know yourself, choose honestly, and stay true. How often in life do we lose not because of external storms, but because we lied to ourselves about what we could endure? Graham's words remind us that authenticity is as vital in investing as it is in love or friendship. Closely tied to this is one of his most famous concepts, Mr. Market. Imagine, Graham says, that every day you have a partner named Mr. Market. He knocks on your door with an offer. He will buy from you or sell to you at whatever price he names. Some days he is euphoric, offering absurdly high valuations. Other days he is despondent, offering laughably low ones. Your job is not to argue, not to predict, not to dance to his moods. Your job is to recognize that his emotions are not your truth. You may buy when his price is foolishly low, or sell when it is extravagantly high. But you must never ever let his madness define your worth. In this metaphor, you can hear the echo of our daily lives, can't you? The voices around us, media, friends, strangers on social media offering numbers, comparisons, judgments. Some days they tell you that you are worth everything. Other days, nothing at all. But wisdom whispers, their valuation is not the truth. You are steady, your value intrinsic, untouched by their chaos. The investor who understands Mr. Market also learns a deeper lesson. Peace comes from detachment, from refusing to let the mood of the world dictate the rhythm of your heart. Another idea Graham gifts us is the margin of safety. At its core, it is simple. Never risk it all. Always build a cushion, a buffer between your decision and disaster. Buy investments below their intrinsic value, so even if you are wrong, you are protected. But listen more deeply, and you realize that the margin of safety is not just financial. It is a life principle. It is the emergency savings that gives you freedom from fear. It is the boundaries you set in relationships so you do not lose yourself. It is the quiet preparation that turns chaos into opportunity. Graham tells us again and again that safety is not weakness, it is strength. To walk on a tightrope without a net is not bravery, it is recklessness. To live with margins is to live with resilience. You, who are listening right now, may need to hear this. Building your margin is not about mistrust of the future, it is about honoring your future self with care, patience, and dignity. And yet, even as Graham speaks about caution, he also warns us against the seductive danger of speculation. The world tempts us constantly to gamble, to chase the fast win, the quick return, the exciting story. The speculator is like a moth drawn to the flame, believing that luck will bend in their favor. And perhaps it does, once or twice. But in the long game, speculation consumes itself, leaving ashes where there could have been growth. Graham does not condemn speculation entirely. He simply demands we tell the truth about it. If you must speculate, call it what it is. Do not dress it up as investing. Do not confuse excitement with strategy. Here again lies a deeper human truth. How many times do we fool ourselves into calling a fleeting fling love or a reckless decision freedom? Graham's gentle insistence is that clarity saves us from heartbreak, both in money and in life. Call things by their true names, and you will suffer less illusion, less regret. Perhaps one of the most moving elements of Graham's teaching is his focus on temperament over intelligence. Success in investing, he says, is not about brilliance. It is about character discipline, patience, humility, and the ability to withstand both euphoria and despair. Warren Buffett, his student, would later echo this again and again, declaring that the investor's greatest enemy is not the market, but themselves. This is why Graham's book feels more like philosophy than finance. He does not teach you how to predict tomorrow's prices. He teaches you how to govern your own impulses. He tells us that the intelligent investor is not the one who knows the most, but the one who acts with the most steadiness. How beautiful, how empowering to know that success is not reserved for the geniuses, but for the patient souls who dare to stand firm while others chase noise. This mantra comes again. Patience is strength, discipline is freedom. There is a quiet moment, a memory that surfaces as I reflect on Graham's words. I remember standing in a crowded marketplace, watching the stalls rise and fall with voices bargaining, some desperate, some triumphant. And in that chaos, I realized how much of life feels like that marketplace prices shifting, people shouting, emotions spilling. And yet, amid it all, there was one old man who sat silently, not rushing, not shouting, just waiting until the right moment came to him. That image stayed with me, and it is exactly what Graham teaches. You do not need to chase every opportunity. You do not need to respond to every fluctuation. Sometimes wisdom is in the waiting, in the stillness, in knowing that true value reveals itself in time. Another profound lesson that flows from Graham's words is the distinction between investing and speculation as a matter of behavior rather than definition. He reminds us that investing is not simply about choosing certain types of assets. It is about the spirit with which you approach them. A stock, for instance, can be either an investment or a speculation depending on the way you treat it. If you analyze it carefully, understand its true worth, buy it with a margin of safety, and commit to it with patience, then you are investing. But if you chase it blindly, seduced by trends, rumors, or the lure of quick gains, then you are speculating, no matter what label you put on it. This truth is humbling because it strips away excuses. It reminds us that wisdom is not about the object, it is about the subject. Not about what you hold, but how you hold it. The same is true in so many aspects of life. A relationship can be an investment or a speculation. A career can be an investment or a speculation. The difference lies in patience, intention, and depth. Graham also speaks tenderly about the danger of inflation and the erosion of value over time. Inflation, he says, is like a slow, invisible thief. It does not storm into your home and take your wealth in one night. Instead, it eats away at it quietly, relentlessly, until one day you realize the value you thought you had has been diminished. His warning is not merely about numbers. It is a metaphor for all the forces in life that slowly, subtly drain bad habits, unchecked distractions, toxic influences. They may not feel urgent day by day, But over years, they leave us poorer in spirit, in health, in love. His counsel is to guard against these invisible thieves, to invest in assets, whether financial or personal, that grow faster than what erodes them. In other words, strengthen yourself against the drift of time, so that your tomorrow is not diminished by your neglect today. Perhaps one of the most liberating ideas Graham offers is the embrace of averages. He suggests that most people, instead of chasing the impossible dream of outperforming the market, would do better to accept the wisdom of diversification, of simply buying into broad indexes that capture the growth of the whole economy. This is not surrender, it is humility. It is the recognition that we do not need to outwit everyone else to thrive. Sometimes the most intelligent choice is the simplest one: to spread your risk, to participate steadily, to let time and compounding do their quiet work. In life too, how often are we tempted to prove ourselves by trying to outshine everyone around us? But Graham whispers that peace comes not from beating the crowd, but from aligning yourself with steady principles that will serve you regardless of fashion or frenzy. There is power in simplicity and safety in humility. It is here that Graham's philosophy intersects with the stories of those who followed him. Warren Buffett, his most famous disciple, has repeated endlessly that the greatest gift Graham gave him was not a formula, but a mindset. Buffett became one of the wealthiest and most respected investors in history, not because he was chasing trends, but because he was patient, consistent, and faithful to Graham's principles. Another example is John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, who built his life's work on the very idea of low-cost index funds, bringing Graham's call for humility and diversification to millions of ordinary investors. Both men proved that Graham's ideas are not abstract. They are living, breathing paths to freedom and security. And if they worked for giants, they can work for you too, no matter where you stand today. Midway through Graham's wisdom, there is a pause, a reckoning with the inner storm that many of us feel. Money is not just math. It is emotion. It is fear, greed, envy, hope. When markets rise, we fear missing out. When markets fall, we fear losing everything. And in those moments, logic evaporates, and we are left trembling before our own impulses. Graham does not shame us for this. He acknowledges it. He tells us that the intelligent investor is not someone who is immune to fear or greed, but someone who knows how to master them, to channel them, to resist the temptation to act rashly. And so here, in the quiet middle of his message, there is hope. Change is possible. You are not doomed to be ruled by your emotions. You can learn discipline. You can grow patience. You can build resilience. Just as a muscle strengthens with training, so too does your temperament. You, who are listening right now, need to know this. Your fears are not your prison. They are your practice ground. Every moment of fear is an invitation to grow steadier, calmer, wiser. Another lesson that Graham threads through his work is the beauty of long-term vision. He insists that wealth is not made in weeks or months, but in years, even decades. The intelligent investor knows that time is their ally, that compounding is the silent engine of growth, and that patience is the bridge between small beginnings and great outcomes. Imagine a seed planted in the earth. Day by day, you may not see much change, but beneath the soil, roots are stretching, life is stirring, and then, in due season, the green shoot breaks forth, and eventually, a tree stands where once there was only empty ground. That is compounding. That is patience. That is faith in time. Graham's wisdom asks us to trust the seasons, to resist the hunger for instant results, and to honor the slow miracle of growth. And how healing is that truth, not just for our finances, but for our souls? It tells us that we do not need to have it all today. That small, faithful choices, repeated steadily, can create futures we once thought impossible. And so, the book moves us from caution to courage, from fear to faith, weaving financial discipline into the deeper tapestry of life. The listener begins to realize that the intelligent investor is not only about stocks or bonds, it is about integrity, about building a life that does not crumble when storms come. Graham's voice, though written decades ago, feels timeless. He speaks of crises and crashes of his own era, yet the lessons echo in ours. reminding us that human nature does not change. Markets rise and fall, technologies evolve, empires shift, but patience, discipline, humility, and truth remain eternal anchors. And so the wisdom continues, deepening into an almost spiritual reminder that your greatest enemy is not the market, nor inflation, nor even the accidents of fate. Your greatest enemy is yourself. Graham understood that investing is not just about choosing assets, it is about choosing who you will be when tested. Will you be swayed by panic when others are afraid? Will you rush headlong into speculation when others are euphoric? Or will you stand in the quiet center, unmoved, anchored by principle? The intelligent investor, he tells us, is not the one who always wins, but the one who refuses to be broken by cycles. That lesson applies beyond money. In relationships, in careers, in health, we face moments of mania and despair. We feel the rush of excitement and the drag of fear. And in those moments, our character is revealed. Graham's call is gentle but firm. Cultivate the temperament of patience, and you will outlast storms that would otherwise undo you. One of the most empowering aspects of his teaching is the idea that ordinary people, those without advanced degrees, those without special connections, those without wealth to begin with can become intelligent investors. You do not need to predict the future, Graham insists. You do not need to outthink Wall Street. What you need is discipline, humility, and time. He believed deeply in the dignity of the everyday person, the worker saving for their family, the quiet soul planning for the years ahead. And he structured his wisdom in a way that honors them, offering strategies that do not depend on brilliance, but on steadiness. This is why his words still resonate decades later, why his book is still handed down, not as a technical manual, but as a companion for the journey of life. It is not about becoming rich overnight. It is about becoming wise for a lifetime. There is another concept that shines through his writing: intrinsic value. The true worth of an asset, Graham says, is not what the market says it is worth today, but what it can deliver over the long run, based on real earnings, real strength, real substance. Intrinsic value is like the soul beneath the mask, the essence behind appearances. And what a metaphor this becomes for life. How often do we judge others, or even ourselves, by the shifting prices of reputation, comparison, and trend? But Graham's wisdom is a reminder. True worth is deeper. It is not in the noise of the moment, but in the substance that endures. To live by intrinsic value is to resist the temptation of the superficial, to honor what is real, even when it is not immediately recognized. It is to choose depth over glitter, substance over show. Imagine how different our lives might feel if we applied this lens not only to investments, but to friendships, to work, to love. What is truly valuable? What will endure? That is the question Graham invites us to ask again and again. And then, perhaps most tenderly, he speaks of the need for protection not just from the world, but from ourselves. He recommends diversification, spreading your investments so that no single loss can undo you. On the surface, this is simple financial advice, but underneath, it is a philosophy of resilience. Do not tie your entire sense of worth to one outcome, one relationship, one dream. Do not put all of yourself into a single fragile basket. Life will always carry risk, and disappointment will come. But if your sense of meaning and strength is spread across many roots, you will not fall when one branch breaks. Diversification, then, is not just financial prudence. It is emotional wisdom. It is a way of saying, protect yourself, build layers of strength, so that no single storm can take away your foundation. By this point in Graham's message, the listener feels a shift. This is no longer a book about finance at all. It is about living wisely. And yet the applications to investing remain clear, sharp, and enduring. He reminds us that the intelligent investor treats the stock market as a tool, not a master. It is a place to find opportunity, not validation. It is a place to practice patience, not excitement. He warns us against chasing performance, against believing that the future will always look like the recent past. He insists that humility is the investor's shield, and that those who believe they can predict the unpredictable are destined to be humbled. And what a beautiful paradox that is. By embracing humility, you build confidence. By accepting your limits, you find security. By surrendering the illusion of control, you gain the freedom to act with clarity. There is an emotional weight in recognizing how timeless this message is. Decades have passed since Graham wrote these words, but the cycles he described still play out in our world today. Booms and busts, manias and crashes, the endless pendulum of human emotion tied to money. And yet, his principles remain solid ground beneath the shifting sands. It is as though he carved a path in stone, while the winds of the market blow ceaselessly above. For anyone listening now, struggling with uncertainty, fearing the future, his gift is simple. You do not need to predict. You do not need to outperform. You do not need to chase. You need only to be steady, patient, and honest. That is the path of the intelligent investor, and the path of the intelligent human being. There comes a moment, as Graham's wisdom unfolds, when the listener begins to feel the weight of his central message, that investing is not about brilliance or luck, but about endurance. He speaks again and again of discipline, of resisting the pull of the crowd, of keeping faith with principle even when the world around you is screaming otherwise. And this endurance is not cold or mechanical, it is deeply human. Because at its heart, money is never just money. It is security, freedom, dignity, the ability to care for those you love, and the chance to live a life aligned with your values. Graham understood that when people lose money recklessly, they often lose more than dollars. They lose hope, confidence, and sometimes even their peace of mind. His work was not simply a guide for building wealth, but a guide for protecting hearts from unnecessary pain. One of the most striking things Graham reminds us of is the illusion of certainty. Again and again, he warns against believing that experts, analysts, or even your own predictions can grant you certainty about the future. Markets are unpredictable because human nature is unpredictable. The only certainty is uncertainty itself. And so, the intelligent investor learns to live not by prediction, but by preparation. This lesson lands with particular force because it resonates beyond money. How often in life do we crave certainty in love, in career, in health, and how often are we disappointed? Graham's wisdom teaches us to stop demanding what life cannot give. Instead, prepare yourself, build your margin of safety, diversify your strength. Accept that storms will come and that you cannot control the wind, but you can build a ship strong enough to endure. There is liberation in this acceptance, a kind of peace that comes not from denying risk, but from respecting it. His words also carry a subtle warning about pride. So many fall into ruin not because of ignorance, but because of arrogance. Believing they are smarter than the market, believing they can time every move, believing they are immune to mistakes. Graham speaks gently but firmly against this. Humility, he says, is the foundation of lasting success. And humility, in this sense, is not self-deprecation, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that you are part of something larger than yourself, that your knowledge will always be limited, that patience will often serve you better than cleverness. The intelligent investor, then, is not the loudest or the boldest, but the one who walks quietly, steadily, humbly. And how beautiful is that vision? In a world that glorifies noise, speed, and spectacle, Graham offers the quiet dignity of humility as the path to freedom. It is also important to remember the emotional core of Graham's message: protection. Again and again, he returns to the idea of protecting yourself, protecting your capital, protecting your peace, protecting your future self from your present impulses. He is like a guardian, reminding us that every decision carries weight, and that every careless gamble risks not just money, but the future stability of your life. And yet, he balances this with hope. His message is never to shrink back in fear, but to move forward with wisdom. The intelligent investor does not hide from life. They step into it with caution, courage, and clarity, building slowly but surely, knowing that the most important victories are not instant but cumulative. And then, as if to tie his philosophy back to the rhythm of everyday living, Graham reminds us of the beauty of simplicity. Do not chase what you do not understand. Do not complicate your life with endless strategies, tools, and schemes. The principles of sound investing are not mysterious. They are steady, almost mundane. Diversify. Be patient. Focus on intrinsic value. Demand a margin of safety. Resist speculation. These are not glamorous ideas, but they are enduring. In the same way, the best lives are not built on constant novelty or excitement, but on steady practice, kindness repeated daily, habits honored quietly, commitments kept faithfully. Graham's voice seems to whisper, greatness is rarely loud. It is often quiet, simple, and steady. And so we return to the essence of his teaching, the mantra that echoes throughout. Patience is strength, discipline is freedom. These words, repeated like a gentle drumbeat, anchor us in a world that constantly tries to unmoor us. The intelligent investor is not superhuman. They are simply consistent. They refuse to be swept away. And that choice, repeated over years, transforms everything. Imagine what that could mean for you, not only in your finances, but in your very sense of self. Imagine living with such steadiness that storms no longer terrify you, that the noise of the world no longer confuses you, that your future feels not like a gamble, but like a path you are walking with dignity. That is the promise hidden within Graham's wisdom, the promise of becoming not just an intelligent investor, but an intelligent human being. There is a quiet reassurance in realizing that Graham never sought to dazzle his readers with complicated formulas or grand predictions. He knew the human heart too well, knew that people crave certainty where none can exist, and he chose instead to give them something far more enduring, principles that hold steady through time. His book reads less like a manual for conquest and more like a letter from an elder, someone who has seen storms and knows that what saves us is not brilliance, but endurance. That endurance, he says, is rooted in habit, in discipline, in the quiet willingness to show up again and again. And so, his teaching becomes a kind of spiritual practice. Protect yourself, stay humble, resist the urge to chase, and remember that what seems slow today will one day reveal itself as strength. Think of the mantra he repeats through his examples and warnings. The stock market is there to serve you, not to instruct you. This is such a liberating idea. Imagine if we lived that way in all areas of life, letting the noise, the chatter, the comparisons serve us as signals rather than as masters. Graham insists that the market is not a god to be obeyed, but a servant to be used. You can choose when to listen, and more importantly, when not to. This reversal of power is a radical act of freedom. It means that your worth is not determined by the chaos of others. It means that you can walk through a world of shouts and whispers with your head unbowed, because you know the truth. You are the one who decides. This idea, though financial on the surface, is profoundly personal. It is a call to reclaim your agency, to stop living as though external judgments define you. Graham also has a tenderness for mistakes. He never promises that the intelligent investor will be perfect, never claims that following his principles will make you invincible. Instead, he acknowledges that mistakes are inevitable, that losses will come, that even the most careful among us will stumble. But here lies his quiet strength. If you follow these principles, your mistakes will not destroy you. The margin of safety, the discipline of patience, the protection of diversification, all of these are shields that ensure that even when you fall, you can rise again. There is such compassion in this vision. It tells us that we do not need to live in fear of being flawless. We need only to live in such a way that when we fail, we are still safe, still whole, still able to continue. In a world that often punishes imperfection, Graham gives us permission to be human. And then there is the gentle invitation to redefine success itself. So often we are taught that success in investing means beating others, earning more, achieving faster. But Graham whispers another truth. Success is peace of mind, security, the ability to live without fear. The intelligent investor is not the one with the highest returns, but the one who can sleep at night without anxiety. What a radical shift this is. It turns the whole culture of competition on its head. Instead of chasing endless comparisons, Graham asks us to look inward and ask, do I feel safe? Do I feel steady? Do I have enough? Success, then, is not an endless chase but a state of sufficiency. And sufficiency, when honored, blossoms into contentment. For you, listening now, perhaps this is the most important lesson of all. You may feel pressure to achieve more, to hurry, to catch up with those ahead. But Graham's wisdom gives you permission to step off that exhausting treadmill. To remember that intelligent investing and intelligent living is about building slowly, safely, humbly, with patience. It is about refusing to be ruled by fear or greed. It is about finding steadiness in a world that thrives on chaos. And if you take nothing else from his words, take this. You do not need to be brilliant. You do not need to predict the future. You need only to be patient, disciplined, and true to yourself. That is the path of intelligence. That is the path of peace. As the message nears its close, Graham's legacy becomes clear. He was not simply offering strategies for wealth, but offering a philosophy for life. Build with patience, protect with humility, honor intrinsic value, and always, always keep a margin of safety. These truths, carried from his time into ours, remain as vital today as when he first wrote them. And they are truths that you too can live by, not tomorrow, not someday, but today, with every choice you make, every habit you honor, every step you take toward a steadier future. And now, as the final threads of Graham's wisdom are woven together, the message settles into something deeper than finance. It becomes a meditation on living wisely and gently with ourselves. He reminds us again that the greatest victories are not in beating the market, not in becoming the richest in the room, but in cultivating steadiness that carries us through storms. The intelligent investor is not the one who dazzles others, but the one who protects what matters, who endures, who builds slowly and humbly, until one day they find themselves standing on solid ground while others have been swept away. That image lingers, like a lighthouse steady against crashing waves, shining quietly not to be admired, but to guide. It is here that the personal reflection of his work takes root. There was a time when I watched someone close to me lose almost everything, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they believed they had to chase every opportunity, had to gamble, had to hurry. I remember the silence in their eyes when the dust settled, the grief of knowing that years of effort had been undone by impatience. And I also remember the slow, quiet rebuilding that followed, small steps, cautious choices, the decision to honor simplicity rather than spectacle. In that rebuilding, I saw the truth of Graham's words, that safety, patience, and humility are not glamorous, but they are the soil in which security and peace can grow again. That moment became a mirror for me, a reminder that wisdom is rarely loud, but always strong. And so, we come back to the timeless mantras that Graham leaves us with. Patience is strength. Discipline is freedom. They are more than financial advice. They are life advice. They remind us that in a culture that glorifies speed, you can choose slowness. In a world that rewards noise, you can choose quiet. In a marketplace that thrives on fear and greed, you can choose calm and courage. These choices will not make you famous overnight, but they will make you free. And freedom, after all, is the true wealth. As you sit with these words, let them not remain abstractions, but actions. You can begin today, in small ways. Set aside something for your future self, no matter how small. Learn to pause before reacting to the noise of the world. Practice gratitude for what you already have, rather than chasing endlessly what you do not. See every decision as an opportunity to honor your margin of safety, to protect your peace, to live with humility. These are not grand gestures. They are simple, quiet choices that, repeated over years, create a life that is both secure and meaningful. And if you feel a weight in your chest, a fear that perhaps you have already made mistakes too great to overcome, Let Graham's wisdom soothe you. Mistakes are not the end. With discipline, patience, and humility, you can rebuild, just as countless others have. The path is not closed. The future is still yours to shape. The intelligent investor is not the one who never falls, but the one who always rises again with steadiness. And that can be you. So let this closing image stay with you. Imagine the dawn, the first light of morning stretching across a quiet horizon. The night has passed, and with it the storms and shadows. The world is new again, and so are you. That light does not rush, it expands slowly, steadily, faithfully, and in its patience, it transforms everything it touches. That is your invitation, to be like the dawn, to grow steadily, to shine quietly, to endure, and to transform. Thank you for sharing this time and space, for listening with an open heart. If this message has touched you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Not for numbers, but because every gesture carries a ripple. Your voice matters, your reflections, your insights, your story may be the light someone else needs. Leave a comment with your thoughts, your experiences, or even the feelings stirred in you as you listened. Together, these shared reflections become a community of resilience and wisdom. And perhaps, in sharing, you will find not just answers, but companionship on this journey of patience, discipline, and freedom. This is the gift of Benjamin Graham, not just the wisdom to invest intelligently, but the courage to live intelligently. And now, it is yours.